Welcome to the third podcast of the Create Conference, and we're moving our way towards June, where we're holding a conference on this whole question of business and community development and how the two come together. My name's Andre van Eymeren. I'm the Managing Director at the Centre for Building Better Community. And this is a podcast around whose world is it? A theological approach to financing in the majority world. Timo.
Yeah, thanks, Andre. My name is Timo Plutchinski. I'm from Hamburg, Germany, and I'm leading the business coalition at the World Evangelical Alliance. And I'm proud that we have two experts in these areas to tackle with, and that are Conradie and Ranjeet Guptara. And Sas, let's start with you. Please introduce a little bit about yourself and give us a kick-off into this topic.
Thank you very much, Andre and Timo. I'm Sas Conradie. I'm the Theology and Networking Manager for Tearfund, the Christian Relief and Development Organization. Currently, I live in London, but currently I'm in Lusaka, Zambia. So I hope the connection will go well. Thank you very much for the invitation to be part of this discussion. As you know, I've been working many years around stewardship, generosity, and giving. If you want me to start, yes, for me, the foundation to giving is the gift from God itself, himself. He gave us the earth to cultivate and to care for, etc. And he's the owner of everything. So we, in ourselves, does not own anything, but we are only stewards or managers of what God has given us in the Garden of Eden, but also then, and I think we will get to that, the greatest gift of it all, Jesus Christ, who came for our sins, as John 3 verse 16 says, God so loved the world that he gave his son.
Thanks, Sas. Okay, secondly, we have Ranjeet Guptara. Please say something about you and kick off the discussion.
Thank you, Timo and Andre. Well, it's been a pleasure following your work from a distance here from the USA. From the accent you can hear, I'm originally from England, and been grateful to follow a lot of the work in financial theology, and that is an area I've been quite passionate about for 20 years, having helped to run the Biblenomics group under Dr. Donald Kay. One of the joys has been really looking at a whole host of transactions and asset classes, as both theory as well as practice, and recognizing the great joy of redemption despite a sinful paradigm. Because yes, on the one hand, the Garden of Eden probably didn't have financial markets, but at the other hand, we're looking forward to a heavenly Jerusalem. And that's a city where we don't need to necessarily buy or sell, because we've had the greatest transaction of all, which is the Lord Jesus recognizing us and recognizing us from that and redeeming us from that with a great transaction of his own blood. The wonderful thing about Christian theology is that we also recognize that it's not just we who've been bought at a price, but the silver and the gold and the cattle on 1,000 hills are God's, and he is sovereign. And that's across the whole world. It isn't just MSCI Global. It isn't just liquid investment markets. It is the entire world. It isn't just America. It isn't just Europe. And that is something that I think we all need to recognize. And I think that we're at the start of a very exciting journey as we realize that there's so much further to go, and that that's part of the hopeful message, that the good news of the good news holistically across all asset classes and globally. And I'm looking forward to the discussion and learning more with you all.
Great. Thanks, Ranjeet. Andre.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you for the wonderful introduction. what we've been discussing in the lead up to the Create conference, because the Create conference itself is actually going to be a working conference. We're wanting people to come together and to have conversations, think about new paradigms and processes and ways forward. So there'll be some input, but majority of our time will actually be spent in work groups and discussions and those sorts of things. And what we've been seeking to do is bring together finance and community development. And it's come out of a bit of a problem paradigm, if you like, where a lot of the work that I've been doing has been connecting with grassroots community development organizations in many different parts of Africa and Asia and Latin America. And I'm hearing the same story, that quite often big NGOs, big funders come in over the top of local communities. And we know that a lot of that is done with good intentions. And I want to take us back a little bit to theological motivations and saying, why do people give? And then the next question is, you know, why does that get skewed into things that are unhelpful? But let's just tackle the first part of that problem. Why do people give money and give resources and that sort of thing? What's going on there, Sas? What's the motivation?
Yes, Andre. I think for many Christians there is a real true motivation based on scriptural passages on helping where there is need. Throughout the New Testament and Old Testament, and there is a very strong emphasis on helping the poor. Jesus himself says that in Luke 4 verse 18, he came to give sight to the blind, to give freedom. So that very strong focus. And then we can look at, for example, think about the poor widow who gave out of her poverty, the Macedonian church out of their poverty in Corinthians. So I think there is a deep. Many Christians realize that the heart of the gospel is the gospel is the giving gospel. We mentioned Jesus is the greatest gift. But throughout the gospel, the emphasis on helping the poor and those who need, Matthew 25, verse 34, where Jesus is saying even, if you have cared for and actually given to the sick and the homeless, etc., then you have given it to me. So I think because there is such a strong emphasis on giving in the gospel, many Christians theologically feel they should and know that they should give. So for me, I think we can come later to some of the obstacles or the challenges to giving, but in essence, the Bible is a giving book, and that is what many Christians, in my understanding, at least, know. How that is being lived out, that's another story.
Yeah, we'll cover
but the foundation of the Bible.
Yeah, thanks, Sas.
Right.
Ranjeet, what's your take on that? Like, why do Christians give?
Probably in between, I can have a quick question to Sas.
Yeah.
So if you say there is an emphasis in the Bible on giving, why did we lose ground on financial economical discussions? So why are the Christians that shy to emphasize that in the same way in their churches and organizations, etc.?
Yes, I think there are different reasons for that. I think in our part of that has to do with our consumeristic society, to feel I want more, but also for me a key text is actually Mark 10 verse 45, where Jesus said that he did not come to be served, but to serve. And then he contrasts that with the rulers of the earth, who actually impose themselves on others and expect others to serve them. I think that somehow that being served, that being given to, that craving for more resources, more things to consume, came into our Christian mentality. Perhaps also for different reasons. You can argue part of it through Calvinism, with John Calvin's very strong emphasis on work hard, also to provide an income. But very interesting also, he said you get an income to help others. And it is not in the, you don't work in the first place for yourself. It is as if unto God, but also to help others. And I think we started losing in our Christianity in Europe in particular, something of that that focus. Perhaps we had been too influenced by the values of the modern world, that I want to have the latest iPhone or the latest gadget. I want to drive the best car, or I want to stay in a nice hotel when I am actually come and be involved in community development work. So I think somehow some of the values of the world has entered into our own, not just behavior, but our understanding of wealth and possessions as well, as if it became ours, and not realizing it is actually, we are just custodians, we are just stewards of what God has given to us.
Thanks, Sas.
And that's a really, great segue back into that conversation around why Christians give. So, Ranjeet, what's your take on that? Why are we called to give? What's going on there?
Great question, Andre. So, it certainly should be out of response and recognition of God's gift to us, that if we're just stewards, we're just passing it on. And if we've been blessed with much, then we also have the responsibility to bless others with much. And at the same time, I think that for a lot of Christians, there's partly that. There's a somewhat Old Testament notion of, guilt, perhaps as a tithe, which is due. But at the same time, the Lord loves a cheerful giver. And the Greek word is hilarion. So the same word that we have in English, hilarious. I don't know many people who are hilarious givers and that full of joy.
Wow.
However, it's a gift to be able to give. It's a privilege, and it's true that it's more blessed to give than to receive.
Yeah.
So it almost inverts the traditional worldly sense that Sas was talking about.
Yeah.
That actually it shouldn't be about what we take for ourselves, but really how much we can give to others. And I do think there's a variety of complex psychology in there, but we should have that joy of giving, which is very much an unworldly joy and an unworldly motivation.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you bring up, the difference between joy and duty. Like, I think for a lot of us, it feels like a duty. It's something that we need to know, we need to do, we know we should do it. But you're actually proposing that it is a source of joy for us to actually give.
Absolutely. And I think that we can recognize different strata of giving. So for instance, in the Old Testament, we have the tithe, we have first fruits, we have almsgiving, and also in the New Testament, we have seed sowing to ensure the gospel is propagated. And there are a variety of different forms of giving and a variety of different motivations of giving. And perhaps there should be a little bit more automation of, okay, how much we give. I've had the privilege of advising a variety of very wealthy and not very wealthy families.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some who are really amazingly generous and have great joy in that, and others who are just starting off down that journey. The great thing is that the Lord's grace is enough to move us all forward to be more generous and to be more wise in terms of how we give. So perhaps we need more motivation to not just give, but to give wisely and to give in a way that Cyrus was touching on. We don't impose values. We don't seek a superiority in any way, recognizing the joy of being able to give.
I think that wise giving, that's a really great phrase. And I think about that in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals and some of what at times feels like an imposition onto the communities that we want to give to. One of the things that I notice in the Gospels as I look at the work of Jesus is that the miracles that Jesus performed enabled people to once again contribute. And one of the things that I see going missing in the majority world is the ability of people to contribute to their own situation. And I wonder how giving has harmed that process and how in turn it could help people find that sense of agency. I'd be really interested in either of your thoughts around that.
Yes, can I come in, Andre? Because this is I spent a lot of my time in Africa, and this is something that I'm quite passionate about. I think a big obstacle or a big challenge in poor communities is that they don't realize how much they have been given to. So they don't realize that God loves them and He has also blessed them with good gifts, and therefore they don't realize that they have certain talents, that they have resources, that they have abilities, that they have natural resources, etc. So because they don't realize that, or they have this feeling, I've been given nothing, therefore I'm by nature poor. I can do nothing about my own situation. Also then, because there are people in the West who can give to me. So I was just tremendously encouraged again, as I spoke yesterday to church leaders here in Zambia, when they started going through a process to realize that God has given them resources, God has given them talents and pieces of land that they can cultivate, and the mindset shift that brings about them, and to just the joy then of realizing God has given me resources, and the total worldview change that happens then as a result. One pastor said to me, for example, yesterday, he was posted to a very remote community in Zambia, basically with a church of a few people. How could they support him? And he was very discouraged, etc. And then he went through some work that Tearfund had been doing with him. He realized, well, he has 1 acre of land. And he started producing food and chicken, etc. The whole community, when they started seeing how he's utilizing the gifts that God has given him, started following his example. And the result is that out of that understanding of God's gift, the church has grown, he has planted a new church, etc., etc. It's just remarkable of that knowledge and just that experience of God's gift to me and the gifts that God has given me, had on that pastor's life and ministry. So for me, this is something, just that understanding of being given to is perhaps essential in our conversation.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sas.
Thanks, Sas. Yeah.
Ranjeet, what are your thoughts around this?
I love the paradigm there. For instance, if there's a mentality of poverty, then you look at what you don't have and your relative lack. Whereas, again, to whom much has been given, much is required, and to recognize all that you have been given enables your mindset to realize all you do have. And I've been so blessed to teach Bible in India, where church multiplication is enormous, way more than 30 or 60 or 100-fold. And at the same time, the schools meet underneath a tree. They don't even have a building. And at the same time, the church has been able to do what the government hasn't been able to do because of relative lack of corruption, and by being motivated by the gospel to serve the least of these, and to rebuild hospitals which are 100 years old, which was started by missionaries, and to see that and to have the privilege of teaching the Bible and to be able to see hospitals coming back to serve the poor out of really ruins, that is a great joy. So I echo the experience you had in Africa there, Sas.
But what are you thinking about this, Timo?
I just look forward to our webinar to dig deeper into that. I mean, that's
absolutely.
I could ask 3 and 4 more questions to discuss that, but yeah. So let's run that webinar in about 2 weeks from now. So, and then dig deeper, and of course at the Create conference in June, where we have much time to dig deeper into that. So great on-ramp on the webinar. Perfect. It couldn't be better.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you, Sas, and thank you, Ranjeet. And we look forward to continuing this conversation on the 18th of March and at the Create conference. And there's more details for you on the website.